So the first part of my learning is that I've been looking at how students think about numbers in the early years, and just because students seem to understand how to count numbers by rote, the meaning that they attach to these numbers it takes a long time to develop, and this isn't an area that I've focused on in my career, so I've found it absolutely interesting. This resource has been incredibly helpful. It's called "What to Look For" by Alex Lawson. It's been helpful because in my career I've spent a lot of time just jumping right into addition and subtraction problems. However, I'm realizing the importance of looking at how children determine how many there are is really helpful, and I think this would help me, or it would help impact my practice in the classroom, because if I see a student struggling, it's just going to give me more information, or where I can look for more information to sort of see what the source of the problem might be. I kind of look at it like sound skills and language. It's like those building blocks. It's those essential skills that need to be there before a student can move on. So yeah, I think it's just added to my knowledge base on how to help students. So this is some learning about explicit instruction, specifically about teaching students how to use counting on as an efficient strategy. In the past, when I've had early primary and I was teaching kids how to add, say, from this picture, 4 plus 2, the students, or I'd have the students just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would have them count all of the dots. But I realized when you're trying to have them develop efficiency, a great starting place would be counting on. And the students, as long as they could subitize, they would have to have that in place. They should be able to look at this dice and recognize which number is bigger, which dice had a larger number, the 4. And instead of counting the 4, you would just start at 4 and then count on, so 4, 5, 6. And I guess maybe when I was doing it before, I would just sort of assume that those strategies would develop on their own. But some of the work that I was doing over the last month or so, I was in an early classroom and we were testing this out, and it was interesting showing kids how to do it and who was ready for it. But they would do it and say, "Wow, this is a lot easier than counting all the dots." So it's definitely something that I'm looking for more when I'm working with students. But some other learning that I've had would be trying to figure out where to start with the students, and it's a combination. I got some of these ideas from reading the Alex Lawson book, but also talking with some of my colleagues, sort of like how to do a quick assessment to kind of gauge where the students would be on a continuum of counting skills. And what we came up with would be just a really simple, straightforward question, like the picture that you see, where you'd ask, how many yellow cubes do you see? How many white cubes do you see? And how many blue cubes do you see, to get a sense of whether or not students were able to subitize those numbers. The numbers that they see with the cubes. After we'd asked the students about how many cubes they saw for each color, we'd then have them count the cubes, and it would be interesting to see if they would start with the largest number or if they would count them all individually, because that's some really good information. But after they counted them, you could then ask, how many cubes are there? 10, and then ask them, like in Figure 2, to join the cubes and ask again, okay, so how many cubes are? And if they count individually because they're not totally sure, or they might just look and they say, well, there's 10, nothing's really changed, you could be able to say that they did have an understanding of conservation. After that, though, you could then ask a question. It's like, okay, so now that you know that there's 10, can you show me 9? And you would get some very good information from seeing how they responded to that. So yeah, after you ask them, could you show 9? If a student just took one off the top and then showed you the other ones and said, here's 9, That would demonstrate an understanding of hierarchical inclusion, like that 9 is embedded within that number 10. Or you could have a situation where a student just starts pulling them off one at a time and counting up to 9, and they're not totally sure. So this type of task would give you some information about where students are and what strategies are already in place, and like where to move on to next. So that was some really great learning for me. Another area of my learning is just, especially with the young early learners, the importance of play. Like, play is a very good way to get students to develop early number sense. It's fun, and math should be fun. Like, you can get a lot of mileage out playing with dice. When I think back to my when I was a kid, I played tons of board games. I'm pretty sure that was how I learned how to add numbers. Like, I just knew what those dots on the die meant. Same thing. You could say the same thing for dominoes. There's lots of great games just using them. Games like memory, where you're flipping things over and you're getting a picture of something that represents 2, and then matching it with with the numeral 2. The list could go on, and I've seen it in action in some of the kindergarten classrooms that I've been with. And when they do talk about play-based learning, I can't think of a better thing than some of the activities and games that you would do as part of your math play. I've read and listened to Joe Bowler speak about things parents can do at home with their students, or with their children. And again, playing with your children and playing with numbers. We want to have students see math as fun, and that they come into school feeling that way, and we should try to push that feeling forward as they go through school. And I think probably the most important element that I've learned, and again, this comes from like working with educators in a full-day kindergarten class, have had lots of experience talking to me and reminding me that when we're introducing these early numeracy concepts, it's really important to slow down, to go deep, and to be patient. They're very new to school, and they're just learning. Cannot rush through this or just gloss over it and assume that everyone understands quantity just because they're able to count. We got lots of time to go into it. Going deep, like you don't need to rush. Like, it's really important that students are able to work with the number 5, and they need to have that established before all of a sudden you start working with the number 10. If you start jumping up to 10 and students get confused, well, it's because you're trying to rush. So definitely patience is the key. During my 5-week block, when I was working with one particular class, I was a little bit frustrated that at the end of the 5 weeks, students hadn't automatically picked up on the skill of counting on, and was feeling a little bit defeated. But the educators I was working with, relax, it's okay. You've only been here for a shorter time. These types of activities are activities that we're going to have out over and over, and the students are going to be exposed to them, and we're going to work with them. But it takes a long time. It's not something that you're just going to see after the student's has been at a PlayStation or a workstation for just a couple of attempts. So again, I guess, and it could probably go for any grade, it's important to slow down, to go deep, and to be patient, because I think if you do that, it will pay off in the end.